Hello, I'm Ben Mankiewicz. Thanks for watching Turner Classic Movies and the last night of May's Spotlight. We have leaned in, devoting 9 nights of programming to a series we called The Defining Frontier, the American Character in Westerns. Tonight, we're focused on the end of an era and Westerns that reflected a time of radical change. We begin tonight with a memorable 1968 feature from Paramount, Once Upon a Time in the West. During the 1960s, the way of life that defined the Western frontier was nearing extinction. Farming and ranching became more industrialized and more beholden to technology. Once wide open spaces became littered with suburbs and strip malls. Additionally, the social order began to change dramatically. The civil rights movement and women's liberation brought lasting changes to American society. The divisiveness and protests over American participation in the war in Vietnam sparked violence that spilled into the streets and onto college campuses. How did all of that affect the movie Western? Well, it changed the tone in Hollywood. The reliable Western storytelling formula largely migrated over to television, giving audiences a primetime lineup of easy-to-digest hits like Gunsmoke, The Virginian, and Bonanza. The Western movie, that most old-fashioned genre of them all, became a canvas for filmmakers to create some of the most radical, most violent, and most reflective films of the era. Many of those filmmakers didn't come from Hollywood. Once Upon a Time in the West came from Italian director Sergio Leone, the godfather of the so-called spaghetti Western. Leone made a vivid mark a few years earlier with his Dollars trilogy, Fistful of Dollars, For a Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. These movies refreshed and reinvented Westerns with some humor, some subtle political commentary, plus heightened levels of violence, not to mention a tremendous amount of dirt and dust. Sergio Leone had a couple of secret weapons. First, his star, Clint Eastwood, as well as composer Ennio Morricone. Once Upon a Time in the West does not have Eastwood, but it's got an aching, anguished, and entirely memorable score by Morricone. Without Eastwood, Leone worked with a different Hollywood actor to make this his 4th Western. Nobody expected Henry Fonda in an electric performance to play against type as a ruthless killer hired by the railroad to make sure no man stands in the way of clearing the land. Charles Bronson is the mysterious stranger out to face Fonda. Leone co-wrote the story with 2 men who became notable Italian directors, Bernardo Bertolucci and Dario Argento. From 1968, also with Claudia Cardinale and Jason Robards, plus Keenan Wynn, Woody Strode, and Jack Elam, Once Upon a Time in the West. The epic Once Upon a Time in the West is rightfully recognized as a masterpiece from director Sergio Leone, though it was not the film he had set out to make after the success of his Dollars trilogy. I didn't want to do any more Westerns, Leone explained. I'd totally done that kind of story. The film Leone wanted to make was the epic tale of a Prohibition-era gangster, Once Upon a Time in America. Paramount promised him he could make that movie if he made another Western first. Leone then envisioned a new trilogy of films, kicking it off with Once Upon a Time in the West. He kind of pulled it off, too. In 1971, he made Duck, You Sucker, also known as A Fistful of Dynamite, or Once Upon a Time, The Revolution. It's set in 1913 against the backdrop of the Mexican Revolution. And Leone eventually made Once Upon a Time in America in 1984 with Robert De Niro leading the cast. Coming up, John Wayne and director John Ford team up in the story of a hardened gunslinger, a soft city lawyer, and a vicious outlaw, the man who shot Liberty Valance, also with Jimmy Stewart from 1962, is next on TCM.
Next on TCM, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, then The Ballad of Cable Hogue, and later, The Wild Bunch. The gang's all here on TCM tonight.